go. So we are recording. So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us on this Saturday. I'm really excited to be able to give you this opportunity to get some community service hours for school. I know you all need a lot of those, and it's hard in this current environment to be able to find meaningful things to do. And I am very grateful to Emily O'Brien and Paige Newman from WPI's Gordon Library, who have come up with a couple of really cool and interesting opportunities. One that we'll be doing today, and one that we are doing on Saturday, August 1st, I believe. And I was looking through the presentation earlier and talking to Paige and Emily, and it's going to be really interesting stuff, and I'm glad that you're here to do it. So I am going to mute myself and go away, but if you have questions or anything, just put them in chat and we will be monitoring that. But I'm going to give this over to Paige and Emily. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you. So we're going to pull up the presentation.
I'm going to start screen sharing.
Okay. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us on Saturday. My name is Emily Ping O'Brien. I'm the Digital Programs and Archives Assistant at the WPI Gordon Library. And Paige, I don't know if you want to.
I'm Paige Newman. I'm a Research and Instruction Librarian at Gordon Library.
So thank you for joining our transcription session. This is a great alternative to an in-person community service. In these transcription opportunities that we share with you, you will be able to assist organizations with historical projects through crowdsourcing efforts. Initially, you might have seen in the calendar invite, we plan to transcribe the African American Civil War records for the African American Civil War Memorial Museum. However, that project was recently completed, like a few days ago. They might have more records available to transcribe in the future, but for today, instead, we'll be helping transcribe the anti-slavery manuscripts for the Boston Public Library. Next slide. So what is transcription? The definition of transcription from Merriam-Webster is to make a written copy. Another definition from the dictionary is to paraphrase or summarize in writing. So to clarify in this session, the second definition will not apply because the type of work we will all be doing is a word-for-word transcription of documents and materials. So as you can see in the images in the slide on the left is a diary page from Mary Church Terrell Papers, which is presented by the Library of Congress. To give you a preview of what transcription entails, you'll be expected to type the words from the document into a separate text box. As you can see, some documents will be harder to read than others, but don't worry about this for now. We will go over some techniques and options you have to help transcribe the materials, even if you can't decipher all the letters or the words. And for this transcription session, just to let you know, Paige and I want to focus on projects that serve underrepresented and marginalized people and communities. And for this session, we plan to cover the benefits of transcription and provide an overview of some projects you can contribute to, and Paige will also walk through the anti-slavery manuscripts. Next slide. So there are many obvious benefits to transcription. Many older documents and materials are handwritten, as you saw, or printed in fonts that software such as PDF readers cannot decipher. So by making a handwritten copy or providing machine-readable text of these materials, we can increase accessibility to historical records. They can be shared online globally to be used for research or for personal reasons. And transcription makes documents full text searchable, which improves the discoverability of materials. Additionally, by providing machine readable text, the materials are now compatible with assistive technologies such as screen readers or screen enlargement applications. Next slide. So some common materials for transcription include diaries, manuscripts, letters, reports, photo albums, specimen labels, more listed here. The two images on the bottom of this slide on the left here are from the diaries of Theo Brown that were donated to WPI. In the middle image, in the last sentence, I don't know if you can see it, I don't know if Zoom blocks it, but it mentions the symptoms of influenza. And in his diaries, Theo Brown talks about the influenza pandemic in 1918, which have been interesting for our archivists at WPI to read about and compare to our current situation today. So now if we think about searching for mention of influenza or flu, may be easy enough to look at Brown's diaries from those certain years when we know it was a problem in the US. But with transcription, it becomes much easier and saves more time if we have text searching capabilities that are available online. Next slide. So before we go into projects, I just want to give you a preview of some of the transcription projects we are currently working on in the Archives and Special Collections department at the Gordon Library. As mentioned, we have Theo Brown's diaries. He was a noted John Deere engineer and a member of the WPI class of 1901. From 1893 to 1971, Brown kept a series of diaries, which were 65 volumes, approximately 24,000 pages, detailing his career at John Deere, his day-to-day family life, and other events. And while the WPI library has been closed, our Access archivist has been transcribing an autobiography from Thomas Corwin Mendenhall. And he was an American physicist and meteorologist and invented the portable Mendenhall gravimeter in 1890, which provided the most accurate relative measurements of the local gravitational field of the Earth at that time. He served as president, too, of WPI from 1894 to 1901, and he even has a glacier named after him. So in this image to the right is a page from Mendenhall's autobiography. As you can see with his cursive writing, your average PDF reader would not be able to decipher the text. In fact, this can be difficult to read for anyone who's not familiar with cursive writing, and still difficult for those who are familiar with cursive writing. Transcription, however, is a bit like detective work. Once you can decipher one word and determine how the writer writes, for example, their lowercase s's, you can usually pick them out from other letters and words as well. For anyone who's joining late, just so you know, we are recording, and we will share this recording after the session and the presentation as well. Nicole will share in an email. So just to give you an idea of the transcription, we've, the Archives Special Collections Department transcribed the first couple of sentences in this entry, which read, if you want to follow along, one or two of them, simple rhymes addressed to her children, always impressed me pleasantly, period. My mother was somewhat emotional in disposition, comma, distinctly religious in her feelings, comma, warm-hearted, comma, generous, and ready to sacrifice everything for a thing in which she believed. So it can, first of all, Mendenhall's writing can be difficult to decipher. Sometimes he just has like a squiggle, but it was fun to figure out when I was helping with this one, how he writes, for example, and. If you spot one word and, which kind of looks like AR something, or AN, you can find the other places where he wrote and. And if you read below, you kind of read the bottom and then you come back to the top and you look around, it helps you determine the words. You can help figure out what the words are a little bit more easy if you kind of look at the whole page. And Paige, if you want to take over the next slide.
Okay, so there we go. So as mentioned earlier, for today, we're going to be looking closely at the anti-slavery manuscripts from the Boston Public Library. But we did want to take a few minutes to go over some other transcription projects that are available online that you may be interested in working on as well. So I'm just going to take a quick look at a couple of these just to give you a sense of the different platforms and the different projects that you can get involved in. So we can see the Library of Congress has a collection of the Mary Church Terrell papers. And Terrell was the first Black woman appointed to the District of Columbia Board of Education. Excuse me. She was a founding president of the National Association of Colored Women and a founder of the NAACP. And if we scroll down, we can see which of these projects are completed, which need review, which are in progress. So if you're interested in the Terrell papers, you can find an example of papers that are still in progress that you can still work on. And what I wanted to show in this project, which I think is pretty cool, is if we look at the collection at loc.gov, we can actually choose one of these items. And we can see here's the original. So I'm going to view these images. And let me go back. Sorry, some of these projects, they all have different formats, but here you can see the original, and actually right down here, you can see the transcript, and there's the text written out. So you can see, I like this project because you can see the original, you can see the text, and you can see this is like what all these projects are working towards, to getting these originals and these transcripts together, searchable. And you can imagine that having, like Emily was talking about, having this text makes it a lot easier for researchers if they want to do some sort of text analysis with text analysis software, or for people using screen readers or other assistive technology, or even for anybody, it's just easier to read this transcript than the original. So it really is about making these documents not only available, but accessible to lots of people. Back to the slides. And another interesting project we have on here is the African American History Project from the National Archives. And this one was a little confusing at first. So they're showing you all the documents. And then if you click on one of them, and scroll down. There it is. You can see where it says view add contributions. This is where you can do the transcription. So you can see transcription that other people have, other volunteers have done. And if you create an account, you can log in and do your own transcription. So this is just to show that each of these platforms, they have their own setup, they have their own tutorials and rules to follow. So we definitely recommend whichever project you're working on, look at the tutorials, look at the guides before you jump in. They're going to have different rules. For example, if you have a word that's unclear, some of these might ask you to put a question mark. Some of them ask you to put just the word unclear in brackets. They have different rules about spacing and line breaks. So just keep that in mind. If you are switching between different projects, there might be different rules to consider. But for today, we really want to take a deep dive into the anti-slavery manuscript projects, which is on a platform called zooniverse.org. And we really like this platform. It's pretty user-friendly. It's a good platform to use if you're new to these types of projects. If you go to zooniverse.org, you'll also notice that there are a lot of citizen science projects that you might be interested in as well. And if that interests you, we're doing another, the library is doing another session on Saturday, August 1st on citizen science. So you can come to that to learn more about that. But today we're going to focus on the history and transcription projects. And so Zooniverse is a popular platform for these type of crowdsourced projects. This allows volunteers from around the world to come together to assist professional researchers. And the goal is to enable research that would not be possible or practical otherwise. So there's so many documents, it's not always practical for one organization, one researcher to transcribe all of them. So that's why they crowdsource them. Many national organizations, museums, and universities host their projects on Zooniverse. And the project we're going to do today is anti-slavery manuscripts. So I'm going to do a walkthrough of that project. So this is antislaverymanuscripts.org. We will be sending out the PowerPoint with all these links as well. So this is from the Boston Public Library. This is one of the largest collections of anti-slavery documents. It's all handwritten correspondence. So that's why it's so important to transcribe it, to make it more readable. And when you're on here, you can read more about the project, and to get started, you would hit this Start Transcribing button here. And I think we had mentioned, and we put in the chat earlier, you might want to create a Zooniverse account. So if you go to zooniverse.org, you can create an account with your email address and set up your password. An account is not required to participate in these projects, but it is recommended. It helps the projects keep track of how many volunteers are working on these. And it also helps you if you want to take a break and then come back to it. If you have an account, you can save your project and then come back to the same document you were working on. If you don't create an account, you can still participate. It just means that once you leave, you save your work, you leave. When you come back to it, you'll be given a new document. They won't be able to put you back where you left off. And as you're working on these manuscripts, so you can see I was working on this earlier, so they found my saved work. So I'm going to continue working where I left off before. So I was working on this letter. And you'll see over on the left, there is a tutorial. So as we mentioned earlier, whatever project you're doing, read the tutorial and refer back to it. It's always going to be here on the left for you to go back to. So if you forget something, don't worry, it's there, you can go back to it. And this gives really helpful rules for how to do this transcription. And so basically you're doing this for this project, you're going line by line. So you don't even have to do a whole letter at a time. You're just identifying each line of the letter and transcribing one line at a time. So you could come in, do 3 lines, save your work, and then come back. You don't have to do a whole letter at once. So the tutorial is going to walk you through how to identify the lines. And you're going to be transcribing all of the words exactly as they appear. You're not correcting spelling or grammar. You're putting all the punctuation in as it appears, so as exact a copy as you can make. Interesting note, if you have a split word, so sometimes, especially in older documents, you'll see words that when they get to the end of the line, they don't have enough room to continue the word, so they'll write half the word, put a dash, continue the word on the next line. If that happens, treat it like it's all on the one line you're working on. So I saw one earlier that was talking about arithmetic. This is a different project, but they had written arith hyphen and then matic on the next line. So in that case, you would just write out the word arithmetic on that first line, and then on the next line, you would start with the first complete word. And there are some text modifiers. So if a word has been crossed out, you can put in, there was a deletion here. If it's completely illegible, you can write the word unclear in brackets. You can identify whether something's been underlined, whether something's been inserted, like with a little caret symbol. So there are different markers here that you can use. And this is really important, the blue, red, and gray lines. So you can see behind the tutorial, some of these lines are blue. Blue means that I worked on those, that I entered my transcription and saved the work. Red means that somebody else worked on it. And that's something really important to keep in mind. If you're nervous about these projects, most of them have multiple people reviewing the same documents. So in this project, I believe each line has to be transcribed by at least 3 different volunteers. So you can, so they can, don't worry if you can't read a whole line, somebody else is also going to be looking at it. And so the blue line means I've worked on it. The red line means that somebody else worked on it. And gray means that 3 people have done it and it's done. So you don't have to add a transcription if it's gray. And if somebody has already worked on it, and we'll show you this in a minute, so if you have one of those red lines where 1 or 2 people have already done a transcription, you can actually look at their work. And if you agree with it, you can just put it in their work. If you disagree, you can edit it. You can put in your own transcription. If you disagree, you just change it, save it. And the program will save each individual transcription. So they'll get the 3 lines from the 3 different users. And don't forget, a lot of these pages are multiple pages. So this one we can see over here on the left, this is a 5-page letter. So once you finish one page, you can just go to the next page. And don't mark anything as completely done until all lines on all pages are gray. And I'll show you that in a minute. You can save progress. So you can come back and save at a later time. Like I said, if you want to come back to the same document, you do have to have an account that you can log into in order to return to where you left off. If you are not going to be coming back to this, you can hit finish. And when you hit finish, you can say either I'm saying finish because I'm done, but there's still work for other people to do, or finish and it's all done, it's all gray, no more work for people to do. And so you can click done, you can done and talk if you want to go to a forum about this document, talk to other volunteers working on it. The Zooniverse community has a nice way of setting up these forums so you can talk to people, ask questions if you weren't sure about a particular document. And there's a field guide as well for unique things that you might come across in these documents. So let's go. So this is the letter I was working on. Again, the tutorial is here. You can always go back to it. The field guide is also here on the left if you have questions about, what are common abbreviations people used back then, how addresses were written out, things like that, what different symbols looked like. And in order to transcribe, again, it's line by line. So in this one, you can see somebody already started it. So I'm going to go to the red line and click on this little dot here. And this is going to pull up the text box. So I can start working on it. And as I mentioned, you can see the previous transcription. So this little down arrow will show me one person has already started working on this. And this was their transcription. They said, so I'm working on this line underlined in green. So the green line is the one that you're in progress on. And she says, she has been in my family. Previous volunteer said this was an unclear word, and then only the time of. So reading it, I agree with the words they come up with. I think I can actually figure out that unclear word. So she has been in my family, comma, and that looks like accepting only the time of. So I'm going to edit this previous transcription, put in my transcription, and then done to save that. And again, some of these documents are going to be harder than others. If something is unclear, you can write unclear, again, because again, other people are going to be looking at it. And then when I want to take a break, I can say save progress, and then I can come back to this later. And if I said, okay, I'm done with this letter, I can say finish. And then this is where that comes into whether or not all the underlines are gray. If all the underlines are gray on all pages of the letter, you say, yes, all pages are complete. If not, you say, no, there are still pages to be completed. And that way other volunteers will see this letter and be able to work on it. I'm going to hit cancel just because I think I will probably come back to this later to work on.
Okay. I was just going to mention like the example I talked first. So the word you found accepting in the beginning, I thought it was exceptions.
Oh.
So at the end, so I look at the last letter and I can see, okay, below, how does he write S? So in the word above weeks, I can see it's different.
Yeah.
That S is different than whatever the letter is behind except what I thought was exception. So to me, accepting is the right word because I think that's a lowercase g now that I've determined how he writes his S's or how they write their S's.
Yeah. And thank you for pointing that out. And yeah, and that obviously will change letter to letter as you get different writers, but That's a really good point. As you're working on one letter, you can study how this person writes certain words. Once you figure out one word, you can, if you know all the letters in that word, you can say like, oh, like, just like you said, you're like, oh, I know that word is weeks. I know that's how they write their S, and I can see that's different or the same from this other letter. So it's, yeah, it's like a puzzle. It's like detective work. You may not be given all the pieces in perfectly clear format, which is why it's important to have you and other volunteers working on this. And you can, up here, you can zoom in and out. And if you click on this little sort of plus sign, you can drag the letter around to look at different parts of it. So this is, like I said, this is how this looks when you are logged in. I do want to show you, I have open in a different browser, so I can show you how Zooniverse looks when you don't have an account. So here, there's no account, there's no save progress button, so you would just say finish. You know, there's still lines to be completed, and when you come back, you would get a different document to work on. And if you get one that you really don't like, you don't want to do any, it trends too hard, if you hit the refresh button, you'll get a different document. So continue without signing in, and you can work on this. And this is cool. You can see some of these have sideways lines, which is kind of fun. I want to find one that hasn't been transcribed yet. Here we go. So if you get one like this, so with the red lines, someone's already done the work of underlining, you can just use those same lines. If you have sort of like a fresh one like this with no previous underlines, the way you would get started would be to choose this transcribe button over here on the right. And this gives you a little plus sign, and you go up here, and when you click down, it tells you how to make the line. So you put your first dot at the beginning of the line, and then your last dot at the end of the line, and then you put in the text. I'm not even sure what this is. I want to say brother.
I was thinking it's not, in the field guide mentions there's abbreviations, just use what's there, but I think BR is brother. Phelps.
We'll say BR Phelps. And then, so for this one, I'd have to go through and do each line like that. And something very important that I hadn't even thought of it till I saw a blog post from them on it is make your transcription line in the same order as the text. So in this case, the text is going left to right. So I want to make sure the first dot I make is on the left and that the last dot is on the right. Some people were doing it the other way, doing it right to left, and when the machine was reading the transcription, it was basically flipping it 180, showing the transcription upside down because the line had been drawn in the opposite direction. So it's one of those little things that you may not even think about as you're working on, but something that is important for the researchers to have an easily readable document. Make sure that you do draw your lines in the direction. So in this case, it's left to right. As we saw in another example, sometimes we had to see the text going up and down. So you just want to make sure you're following the direction of the text as you make your line.
I think the first page of this one too, I think it has an example of an insertion. Right.
Looks like it, yes.
Yeah, that's where you would put the bracket insertion and then write the line that's right above it.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So for this one, yeah, this would be one line. And then I believe this, oops, I did that the wrong direction, so I'm gonna delete it. I believe, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you would draw it this line and then put in the subject, insertion, and then this phrase up here.
Yeah, that's my impression.
And then the rest of the line. Again, you always have the tutorial and field guide here for you to refer back to clarify any of those rules.
And again, you won't be the only one
yes.
that particular document.
I always find that so reassuring.
Yeah.
that someone else is going to be looking at it. And so these are the anti-slavery documents. There are other projects on Zooniverse. So if you go to the Zooniverse homepage, we just go there. So on the Zooniverse homepage, you can click on See All Projects. And for transcription, your best bet is to look at the history projects. And you can see there are lots of history and transcription projects that you can work on. For example, this one is called Every Name Counts. And so this is looking at the names and information about the people who died in the Holocaust. So this is another important project to remember these people. And what might be interesting about this project is if we look at some of the examples here, you can see there's not so much the cursive handwriting. There's some typewritten, some handwritten, but not in cursive. And for a project like this, rather than underlining and transcribing, it actually gives you the different boxes to fill in. So you can see occupation, need some help with this task. It shows you where on the card you can find that person's occupation. And you can type that in just the way it appears on the card. So you keep all the spellings the same. Again, they have a tutorial, they have a field guide, which is helpful for, the field guide is helpful for some of the German words. And so this project is another important one, and again, one that might be appealing if you're having some trouble with the 19th century cursive writing.
And we did link to this. This is in one of the available projects listed in the slide. And one thing it discusses in its universe tutorial that when you go through the tutorial yourself, you'll notice it says archival markings. You do not need to transcribe. So you'll notice those sometimes in the top corner. It's handwritten, usually in pencil. Yeah, do they have that? I think we went through it really quickly.
Yes.
But so sometimes it's the archives department at Boston Public Library who wrote some notes at top. Those will not need to be transcribed. Just
yeah. So usually those are written in pencil, some sort of numbering, and that's just a label that the archivists have put on the document. So it's not part of the original document. It's part of the archivist's way of organizing the document. There it is. So yeah, you'll see these little pencil written numbers or other markings. So you just leave those out because they're not part of the original document.
Yep.
Let's see, Emily, do you have anything else to add, or should we open it up for questions?
No, I think I think we went over everything. We can open up for questions, whether you want to add in the chat or Nicole, I don't know if you recommend either way, but if anyone wants to come off mute, that's fine too.
Yeah, I mean, if they want to unmute themselves and ask a question, that's fine. Or if they want to write them in chat, either way works.
Okay.
I just have two people who are unable to, for some reason, access this. So,
okay.
So that one of them is able to listen, and we'll try to answer questions for him if he has any, but they'll get the copy of the video and the PowerPoint.
The chat question I see right now is just where should they look for the recording?
So that'll be on the Canvas site. I am going to attempt to download it now and email it to everyone who registered. I can't guarantee that's going to work. If it's too big of a file, I don't know if it'll transfer through email, but I will definitely get the PowerPoint to them, and otherwise the video will be up on Canvas, but probably not until middle of next week.
And I'm just going to share my screen again because I just remembered, I don't know if we shared this already, but there is a Padlet link as well that will go out where you can show, take a screenshot of what you did. So you can see, like, you can screenshot here the blue lines. So the blue line shows you've worked on it. So as you're working on it, you can take some screenshots and put them up on the Padlet to show your work. And I wouldn't worry so much about, like, oh, how many documents, how many lines did I do? You can think about, like, how much time did I spend on this? Because some documents are going to be more difficult and more time consuming than others. So if you want to time yourself, you can take some screenshots and write down, you know, I spent this amount of time working on this project.
Yeah, and that's great to note, Paige. Thank you. So one of the questions in the chat was, will we get a letter for community service? And yes, you absolutely will. That's kind of why we want to see these either here on the Padlet site, or if you want to email a screenshot to pop@wpi.edu. In my follow-up email that you will get directly after this session, I'll have both of those links in there for you to use.
Thank you.
Paige, if you want to go back to the presentation there, just so they see the link there too.
Yes. Is that at the end?
Yeah, I think it's the second to last slide. Our email addresses, both Paige and I's email address are here in the Padlet and then also in the slide presentation. So feel free to reach out to us if you have questions.
Oh, yep, and there's the link to the Padlet.
We're not experts, but we can.
Well, we're enthusiasts, and
we're enthusiasts. Yep.
And we like encouraging other people to get involved in these projects, and especially right now when it is hard to travel, it is hard to get involved in in-person projects. So this is something you can do right from your computer.
And actually, these anti-slavery manuscripts, they had posted the last ones, and a lot of these transcription crowdsourcing projects have been completed very quickly recently. And so we actually thought this one was not available, but recently they uploaded a couple more manuscripts. I think they're close to being done at the Boston Public Library. So we'll see how far we get on this project after you all help.
Yeah, so if you want to work on the anti-slavery manuscripts, get involved soon. And if those two are completed, there are, like we saw, lots and lots of other transcription projects to work on that focus on different areas of history. And like Emily mentioned, focusing on underrepresented groups and getting those voices into our histories.
Yeah, that's amazing. Anybody else have any questions before you're ready to get off and start transcribing?
We covered everything.
You did cover everything. Will yes, absolutely, John. You will receive credit for any transcripts you do. Again, this is a suggested one, but if you find something in there that is of more interest to you, by all means, whichever ones you do, we will certainly sign off on your community service.
Like I said, we think Zooniverse is a great platform to start with because it's pretty user-friendly. It has those nice, clear tutorials. You can do it with an account or without an account. Some of the other projects we looked at do require an account, do have different rules, so just something to keep in mind as you're choosing your project.
And the chat question, where will the links be? Nicole is sending the presentation with the links in them right after this session in email.
Yep, so the links, all the project links are hyperlinked in the PowerPoint.
Yeah, and just give me like 5 minutes. I want to wait till the video downloads to see if that will send to, because I think it's helpful to be able to review back to what you said. But again, if not, it'll be available on Canvas.
And Megan is asking on chat, make sure to send screenshots to submit for community service credit. And yes, so the Padlet link, just post there a screenshot of the work you did, and you can submit the time that you spent, like Paige suggested, or like Nicole said, on that POP email address. You can send a screenshot there as well.
I'll include that in the email that I'm sending you.
Perfect.
The link to the Padlet. And like Emily said, you don't have to submit every single page. You can just make sure your name is there so we know what your name is and how long you spent on it. And that will be great.
Yeah. And like Paige said before, August 1st, the other session will be Zooniverse as well, but the citizen science projects are really fun. There's some we've done in the past, like spotting how many penguins are in a picture or what wildlife animals have tripped a camera in a national park. So stay tuned.
Yeah, the citizen science project ones are really fun, and for that we're going to show Zooniverse. We're also going to show some platforms and websites where you can find some in-person projects in your area. So if you want to get outside, it can be as simple as there's an app called iNaturalist you can download, get outside, take pictures of the wild plants and animals in your neighborhood, or you can get involved in specific projects either in person or online. So we're going to be going over what citizen science is and how to find and get involved in it.
I have a question. So after the Frontiers for Credit ends, will we still be able to be part of these opportunities and community service?
Yeah, so if you get involved in one of these online transcription projects, you can keep working on it for as long as you want to. I'm sure different schools and organizations have different rules about collecting that community service data, but if you just want to do it on your own, you can definitely feel free to keep working on it on your own. Like I said, if you make an account, it's just, you know, whatever email address you want to use, whatever password you want to set up. You don't have to be part of any particular organization to join these projects.
All right. Well, thank you, Paige and Emily, for bringing us these great opportunities. I think they sound like a lot of fun, and thanks to you all. Oh, excuse me. Is there a certain date to submit the transcribed documents? As far as Frontiers for Credit is concerned, if you can get them to us by the end of our program, which is August 14th, I believe is the date, we'll be happy to make sure you get credit. And we want to do that because, you know what, again, for the people who are not here today, who might log on and watch this video next week or the week after, you know, it'll still count for sure. Thanks for your question. All right, well, with that, let's go start transcribing. And again, I'll send this stuff to you. Emily and Paige can answer any questions you have. They generously gave their email addresses, and we look forward to seeing what you're doing. Have a great day.
Thank you all for coming.
Bye.